Ambassador Jeffrey Feltman in early January, making Mike Hammer the third appointee to the position in under 2 years. Mike Hammer has most recently been U.S. Ambassador to Democratic Republic of Congo and has served as the U.S. ambassador in different positions in the White House. The Bureau of Health says that there has been a spike in communicable diseases since the start of the war in 2020, and cases have not only continued to rise as the siege has managed to deplete its essential medical supplies. The Bureau says that even easily treatable and preventable diseases such as malaria that we previously on edge of being eradicated may now possibly take the lives of many. Reporter Salah Kalali has more.
Malaria is an intermittent and remittent fever that, despite being easily treatable, can have life-threatening consequences when patients don't have adequate medical treatment. It's typically transmitted by a female mosquito that carries the Plasmodium parasite from an infected person to a healthy person. Before the start of the conflict, Aragayu Gebremadhin, team coordinator at the Bureau of Health, says Tigray was close to eradicating the disease, but today finds itself at the edge of an outbreak.
Before the genocidal war was declared, we were working to eradicate malaria in 69 districts. Now we are afraid that many may die because of the disease.
Aragay says this is due in large to lack of medication and essential supplies across the state.
Global Fund, in cooperation with the World Health Organization, used to provide free medication and medical supplies essential for combating malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS. We are no longer receiving this assistance. Our share is in the hands of our killers.
With the winter around the corner and lack of supplies like mosquito nets in Tigray, Aragay is afraid that the situation is likely to deteriorate even further and advises the community to use makeshift mosquito nets.
There
are no mosquito nets in Tigray now, but we can use similar materials to produce makeshift mosquito nets that can help to prevent the disease.
Many health facilities in Tigray have been systematically looted and destroyed, and support from many non-governmental organizations have been blocked as Tigray continues to suffer under a deadly siege.
Children with special needs and chronic illnesses have been one of the most highly affected by the ongoing siege, especially in light of massive depletion of essential equipment necessary to help them accommodate with their environment. We met a 10-year-old girl in Mala, a health complication when she had a health complication when she was just 1 year old, has made it difficult for Eden to move on her own, but has been equally difficult for her mother, who used to be able to provide for her daughter, but can no longer able to do so. Karum Waldar Brhan's report is presented by Sarun Zakai.
Aiden Gavramedhin is a 10-year-old child with special needs who lives in the capital of Tigray, Mekelle. She says she developed her condition that doesn't allow her normal physical movement when she was just 1 year old due to a health-related complication. Today, Aiden says she cannot access medication or food, exasperating her health condition.
I'm so hungry. I need injera, but there is none. What can I possibly eat? My mother can't provide me with food. I'm about to turn 10, and I need a wheelchair. I must get medical attention as soon as possible.
Aiden's mother, Hewan Zoga, used to care for her daughter's need by doing daily work that has been very limited since the start of the war. These days, she spends most of her time at home giving care to her daughter. She says she has to carry her daughter everywhere she goes because she doesn't have a wheelchair yet. But mostly, she's concerned that her daughter isn't getting enough food.
My daughter goes everywhere I go. I can't leave her alone. I can't leave her to go to work because there is no one who can look after her. I spend much of my time at home with my daughter.
Awatash, Hewan's neighbor, says she wishes she could help her friend, who is struggling because it's impossible to both provide the care that is needed to her daughter and work to earn a salary.
She always has to carry her daughter with her on her back. This is too much for anyone, and we can't help her because We ourselves are in a difficult situation. No one is helping her.
Local official Ashanafi Gabra says Eren's story is just one of many that sees people with special needs and other vulnerable groups have been the most affected by the ongoing siege.
We are not able to reach all those in need because everyone is in a difficult situation. We are doing our best to help those with the special needs and children though. Eden is not only starving, but also unable to get a wheelchair and other equipment necessary for a person like her that's suffering from a disability. Anyone that can help her, we ask that they please do.
A failing health system, lack of humanitarian assistance, and the discontinuation of essential services has put many in desperate situation, including people like Aiden, whose future may be left dim if she's not able to access healthcare and food.
The year-long siege on Tigray has put millions in critical conditions as food, medicine, and other essential items continue to be blocked from reaching Tigray. Among the millions suffering, women, children, and people with special needs are just some of the most highly affected. We spoke with women residents of Mala who live in community housing, and they tell us that lack of medication and food has left them in crises. Saron Zagai has the report.
Zahainish Garabsky and her neighbors live in a community housing provided by government years ago as part of a program to support persons with special needs, chronic illnesses, and the elderly living in extreme poverty.
We were given these houses by the government to support people with special needs. I have a disability. I have a nerve condition. And my arm as well.
Zahainish says that she and her neighbors used to lead a difficult life as it was. They depended on support from a group of volunteers in the community and some money from the government to make ends meet. She says now much of that is gone and she is unable to fulfill even her most basic needs.
We are in critical situation. Before the war, our community and some volunteers used to help us. Now we're starving. Everyone is suffering. But the circumstance of people with special needs is even more dire.
Silas Abraha is Zahainish's neighbor. She is 75 years old and she says she's diabetic and also suffers from high blood pressure and is unable to get medication for neither.
I'm diabetic. I also have high blood pressure, but there's no medication available. Before the war started, people would buy me my medication because I wouldn't be able to afford them. But now there's no medication. I used to take 8 kinds of medication for diabetes and 1 for my high blood pressure. But now I have nothing. Sometimes I black out and they tell me to eat sugar.
Gargis Abarra, another neighbor, used to live on the streets with her 8 family members before she moved in next to Silas and Zahainish. Gargis, just like her neighbors, has been impacted by the deadly nature of the siege. She says the world needs to take action and should not disregard the pain of Tigrayans.
We're not getting any help. They need to help us when it's still possible. What will their tears do for us once we're gone? People everywhere, help us. We're starving. We're dying.
Gargis, Hainish, and Silas are just one of the millions in Tigray living in dire humanitarian conditions as the world stands idly and falls to take decisive action to end the human suffering in Tigray.
Our reporter Wintaki Dana visited an IDP camp in Ma'ala. There, Leta Burhan, another of 6 displaced from Western Tigray. Leta Burhan says she left her home to escape and discriminate shelling and violence from Amhara and Eritrean forces. She says she was on the run for 8 months until she finally reached Ma'ala. And while her and her family have been able to find some sense of security here, they, like a million more displaced from Western Tigray, are not able to access food or medication. Wintaki Dana has more.
Latamkil Haila is from Turkana in the district of Kafta Humora in Western Tigray. She is a loving mother of 6 that was
One of my daughters has epilepsy, and my son suffers from a mental condition, and I don't know how or where to get them medication. They tell me to buy medication from private pharmacies, but I can't afford it. We don't even have food or clothes.
Letta Mikhail says she feels helpless. She says her neighbors die and her children hunger. She pleads with the world to do what it can to help provide basics like medication and food.
There is no way we can help ourselves here. My neighbors are dying due to lack of food and medication. The world has to help us.
Letta Mikhail's story is just one of more than 1 million people displaced from Western Tigray who have managed to find shelter but have not received humanitarian assistance for months or even a year.
We visited hospitals in Aksum where health professionals tell us they're losing children due to easily preventable diseases due to lack of medication. Reporter Sablor Glema has more.
This is Aksum Primary Healthcare Center in Aksum, Central Tigray. Sister Ngisti Gabrahewat, a nurse at the center, says that the hospital has completely run out of vaccination, putting the lives of thousands of children living in its vicinity.
Vaccination is essential for children, especially those under the age of 1. But we haven't been able to provide this for our patients because there is simply no supply. The child over here, for example, is 7 months old. He needs to take multiple vaccines, but all he's getting is paralysis.
She is 65 days old, and she didn't get any vaccination yet.
I came here so that my daughter could get her 6 months vaccination, but they said there is none available.
Medical experts in St. Mary Hospital, another hospital in Aksum, says medical professionals have not been able to provide sufficient care for children suffering from malnutrition or any other diseases due to lack of medical supplies. Some health workers have in fact become so desperate that they've started to use expired medications to treat their patients.
7 to 10 children here are severely malnourished. Their body is swelling up. It would have been simple to treat them if it hadn't been for the severe lack of supplements, and now children are dying. We lost 2 children last week alone, just because we don't have enough medication. And we sometimes have to use medications that expired more than 2 or 3 months ago. We are desperate for supplies.
Mothers and children are severely malnourished. The numbers on malnutrition are very disturbing. There are more than 340 malnourished children in this hospital alone. In addition to the lack of medicine and vaccination, the lack of food items in the hospital is exacerbating the condition of patients at these hospitals.
There is no food here. They say they have nothing to give us or our children.
Our children are underweighing. This is because mothers are malnourished during pregnancy. But we also have a severe shortage of supplementary food that are needed to treat underweight children.
Dr. Salomon Harui, medical director at St. Mary Hospital, says lack of medicine and vaccines may have an impact on the health and well-being of a generation.
كتابة درجة almost زي ناولدو حدا ولدو gap كلهم صغير إذا أمن.
Children are not getting their vaccinations. This could have a major impact on a generation, resulting in a generational gap.
For almost a year, Tigrayans have been denied access to basics such as food and medication, resulting in a humanitarian catastrophe of magnificent proportions, sure to affect the health and well-being of generations to come.
Our reporters visited St. Mary Hospital in Aksum this past week, where they met with Aksumite, a 15-year-old girl diagnosed with a heart condition that requires her to take medication and undertake routine medical treatments at the hospital. But nothing has been routine since the siege on Tigray that has left many devastated. Salomit Khalai has the report.
Aksumite Kahsari is a resident of Aksum. 3 years ago, when she was just 12 years old, she was diagnosed with a heart condition that requires her to have surgery. Meanwhile, doctors at St. Mary Hospital provide her with treatment that is only meant to keep her alive until she can have the surgery.
I
have a heart condition. I was diagnosed almost 3 years ago. I've been told that I need heart surgery if I were to fully recover. The treatment I'm receiving here is only meant to be temporary until I can get the surgery. But if the hospital were for some reason to stop providing me this treatment, I would die.
Her condition makes it difficult to pass liquid, so it just accumulates in her abdomen.
My medication. So my only option is to go home and die. I don't have any money. I don't have a salary. We are dying because we don't have any medication. And we can go to private pharmacies because their prices are too high.
A pharmacist at St. Mary Hospital, Daniel Mabrahtu, and Governor Miskal Gabriel, Chief Executive Officer of the hospital, on their part say that many have lost their lives by easily preventable diseases.
People that could have easily been cured die on our watch. There are also many that die at home because there is no use in coming to hospital with no medication. We don't have anti-pain or antibiotics. We don't have any food for patients. There is also no IV fluid. There are times where they deliver babies without gloves.
There are close to 4 million people in Tigray, and they are in need of medical assistance, many of whom are unlikely to receive the care they need if the world remains silent.
That wraps up our news for today.